Hello everyone. I am here with another video for you. We just finished up sort of the first half of our units that was on ratios. And today we're going to begin the second half. I'm going to do a little introduction on what is called rates and unit rates. We're going to start out today with a little bit of vocabulary because we need to know the difference between these two terms, a rate and a unit rate. They are very similar to ratios with some tiny differences I'm going to explain to you. When we talked about ratios the past couple of weeks, we said a ratio is a comparison of two items. And we could write those items a couple different ways. We could write them with the word to, we could write them with the colon in between, and we could also write them as a fraction. That still applies to what we're going to do here with rates and unit rates. That is the same. So, a ratio is a comparison of two items, and a rate is a comparison. When we have a rate, we have a ratio of two quantities. The difference is we're comparing different units. Okay? In this one, for example, we're comparing $24 for 3 books. So we're comparing money to books. And there's 3 of them here. Money to books. So we could write it with the word to. We could write it with the colon. And we could also write it as a fraction. Okay, but the difference is when you had a ratio, there was no units. When we have a rate, there is units. In this example, it is money and it is books. The two big terms that we want to focus on today and know the difference between is a rate and a unit rate. Okay, so we just learned that a rate is a ratio of two items, but it has different units. So here's some examples. We could say $24 to 3 books. So my unit is money and the books. We could say that somebody took 10,000 steps in 12 hours. So your units, we're talking about steps and hours. They're two different things. Or that somebody read 200 pages in 2 hours. So we're talking two different things, pages and hours. Okay? A unit rate is still comparing, okay, quantities. But the difference is one of those units is 1. To 1 unit. So for example, let's look at some examples here. In this one, you spent $10 for 1 book. It has a unit of 1. One of the units, money, okay, and this one is books. One of the units is a 1. That's a unit rate when it has 1. This one does not. This one had 3 books. So this one has 1. A unit rate, someone took 500 steps in 1 hour. One of my units is 1. This example up here was not. It was about 12 hours. And finally down here, you read 75 pages in 1 hour. Again, one of our units is 1. Okay, so the difference is a rate. Okay, none of these units would be 1. Okay, a unit rate has a unit of 1. Okay, so let's look at some of this in a little more detail here. Okay, so our focus right now is we need to figure out if some of these examples I've listed are rates or a unit rate. Okay, so remember, a unit rate means that one of our units has to be 1. Unit means 1. Okay, so I'll put that 1 up there as a little reminder for now. So let's read some of these situations and we're going to move it to where it needs to be. So we spent $27 for 3 pizzas. So as I look at that, I don't see anything that has the unit of 1. If it's more than 1, it is a rate. So I'm going to slide it over here. Okay. Someone ran 22 meters in 10 seconds. Again, I don't see any unit that is 1. So I'm going to move it to the rate column. It is a rate. In this one, it says there's 25 students per classroom. Okay, Now, a key to this, although it does not come out and say the unit 1, this word per, okay, also means 1. Sometimes you may hear miles per hour. That means 1. Okay, so although it doesn't come out and say 1, that word per is your little key there. So this one would be a unit rate. So I'm going to move it over to that unit rate side. Okay, how about 5 pounds of potatoes for $6? Again, I don't see anything that says 1, so it would be a rate. And the price is $5 per yoga class. So there's the word per again. So the word per indicates 1. So I would put that over there. Okay, so the difference between the two, yes, they both have units. Money and pizzas, students and a classroom, so forth. They have units, but a unit rate has 1 somewhere. Whether it writes the word 1 or maybe you see the word per, that is an indicator of 1. Okay, so we should know the difference between a rate and a unit rate as one of our focuses for today. Okay, our next goal is to take some situations that you are given and to be able to figure out the unit rate. So let's look at this one. This one you should be able to possibly do in your head. Kira biked 8 miles in 2 hours. So the question becomes, how many miles did she travel in 1 hour? So when you look at this, we know that this is a rate, right? Because it has more than 1. We're comparing miles and we're comparing hours. And nowhere in here's a 1. So this is a rate. We want to turn it into a unit rate is our goal here. Okay, and there's a couple ways that you can do this. One way we could do it is we could set up sort of a ratio that we've been using. So let's look. If Kira went 8 miles, right, in 2 hours, we want to know how many did she go in 1 hour. So I would put the 1 across from my hour, right? I'm matching up my units. And we would be able to figure this out. We should be able to say, like, hey, we divide by 2 here. And if I divide by 2 up here, I would know that in 1 hour, she went 4 miles, right? So you can set it up as a ratio that we've been doing. The other thing we can just do is we can say, hey, we can just divide 8 divided by 2. And you will figure out that she went 4 miles, right? She went 4 miles in 1 hour. So we now have a unit rate because we have 1 of something. Okay, let's look at another one. This one says there were 351 chairs in 27 rows. So how many chairs would be in each row? Well, right away, if we look at this, we should know that we have a rate. Because nowhere in this does it say anything about 1. It talks about how many chairs are in 27 rows. So our goal is to figure out how many is in each. Another word for each is how much is in 1 row. There's another indicator that we're looking for a unit rate. I'm just going to abbreviate that a UR right here. So again, we could set this up as a ratio and say I want 351 chairs. I'm going to put a C here for 27 rows. So now what I want to know, how many would be in 1 row? So I'm going to set my 1 across from each other. And we can figure it out. Well, to go from 27 to 1, I would divide by 27. So I would do the same to the top, right? What you do to one, you do to the other. So if I divide by 27 here, I would figure out that there is 13 chairs in each row. That's one way to do it, or just divide 351 divided by 27, and I will get 13 chairs per row, or in each row, right, for 1 row. however you like to write it, with the colon, with the division sign, if you want to put the word 2, any of those. But we've figured out how much it is for 1 using division. Okay, let's look at one more like this. This one says Jaden scored 84 points in 6 games. Again, this one is a rate because nowhere on here does it tell us what he did for 1. It tells us about 6. We're comparing points to games. So we want to figure out how much he did per game. There's that word per. So we're looking for the unit rate. I'm going to abbreviate that again. UR, just to save me some writing here. So we could set it up as saying, okay, 84 points. And then that was in 6 games. Right? So now we want to know how many would he do in 1 game. So let's set the same units up across from each other. So that would be 1. This would be dividing by 6. Right? So I could do the same up top, and I would figure out that my answer is 14. And don't forget, we also have the option of just using division. We don't have to set it up like this. We can just say, hey, there was 84 points in 6 games. And if I divide 84 by 6, I get an answer of 14. So I know that he scored 14 points, right, per 1 game, or 2-1 game. Whichever way you like to write it, fraction, the word 2, or the colon. Either method is fine, but we're trying to figure out what he scored for 1 game. Okay, let's look at a slightly different problem. This one asks 2 questions. The scenario says, Megan babysits for 5 hours and she earns $50. So we want to know in A, how much does she earn for 1 hour? And then B, how much would Megan earn if she babysat for 4 hours? So let's take this one step at a time. If we look at this scenario, she babysits for 5 hours and earns $50. We know that this is a rate, right? Because nowhere did it give us 1. So we've got to figure out what would she earn for 1 hour. Now, I know the 5 is listed first, but don't let that throw you. What goes on the bottom is always what you're trying to figure out 1 of. And we're trying to figure out what she earns for 1 hour. So that means my 5 goes on the bottom. And the 50 is going to go on top. Okay? So if we divide 50 divided by 5, you will figure out that she earned $10 for 1 hour, right? So it's $10 for 1 hour. Now we want to know, in the second one, it says, so how much would Megan earn if she babysat for 14 hours? So we know if she got $10 for 1 hour, we want to know how much would she get if she babysat for 14 hours. So I can put the 14 here across from my 1 hour, and we can figure out our missing number. Well, to go from 1 to 14, this time you have to multiply by 14. So if I do the same to the top, I need to take 10 times 14. And I think you would figure out that she's going to make $140 if she babysat for 14 hours. Again, or the other option is just take your $10 times 14 hours. And you would get 140. So we had to figure out what we earned for 1 before you could figure out the 14. Okay? Let's look at another problem that's similar to the last one. This one says, a machine can print 325 t-shirts in 10 minutes. We have 2 questions to answer. The first one says, how many can be printed in 1 minute? And then, how many can be printed in an hour? Okay, so let's start with the first one. If it is printing 325 t-shirts in 10 minutes. That is a rate, right? Because it is about more than one. We need to figure out the unit rate. We need to figure out how much can it do in 1 hour. So you're just going to do 325 divided by 10. And you'll figure out that it can print 32.5, which is like saying a half, 32 and a half shirts, right, in 1 hour. So that is our unit rate, right? In 1 minute. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. In 1 minute, it does 32 and a half. So now we want to know, if that's what it does in a minute, how many can it do in an hour? So let's think about this. What we have been doing, or what we did in the last problem, was we took the 32.5, or whatever our answer was here, and multiplied it by this. Well, if I multiply by 1, I'm going to get 32.5 again, right? And I should be doing, if that's what I do in 1 minute, I should be getting more in an hour. So what we need to do here, although this says 1 hour, we need to sort of change this a little bit to minutes here to match. So in 1 hour is 60 minutes, right? So now let's multiply by 60 because we're talking about minutes, right? So if I multiply 32.5 times 60, you'll get an answer is it can make 1,950 shirts in 1 hour, or 60 minutes, because they're the same thing. Okay, now that sounds a little more reasonable, is that we're doing more in an hour than what we did in a minute. Okay, so we figured out one, then you can figure out your next one. Okay, let's look at one last problem. This one says, in 3 minutes, Juan texted 237 words. So our questions are, how many words can he text in 1 minute? And how many can he text in 5? Okay, so again, as we look at this, our scenario, neither one of these talks about 1. So this is a rate. We need to figure out the unit rate, how much it is for 1. And we do so by dividing. What goes on the bottom is what you're trying to find one of. I want to know a minute. So I'm going to put the 3 on the bottom and the 237 on the top here. Because I want to know, I want to know how much is being done for 1 minute. So if we divide 237 divided by 3, plug it in your calculator exactly like that, you will see that he texted 79 words per minute, or in 1 minute, right? So now that we know that, we want to know how much could he do in 5 minutes. Okay, so we're just going to take the 79 and multiply by 5. We want to know if that's what happens in 1, what would he do in 5 minutes? So 79 times 5 in your calculator, you would see that he can do 395. 395 words, right, in 5 minutes. Okay, so I hope this is clear, but our big goal today was to know the difference between a rate and a unit rate. They both have to have units, as in this example I showed you earlier, money to books, steps to hours. The difference is a rate is about more than 1, and a unit rate has 1. Okay, so you should know the difference and also be able to calculate them. Okay, you do have some practice to do. Good luck with that, and message me if you need anything. Have a great day, guys.